Welcome, everybody. I am your host, Francisco Martin, and welcome everybody to the Creator Dive-In. We have a very exciting presentation for you today, a really exciting dive-in by Coraly Rosario, working on leveling up your resume. But before we get into that, let's have a little bit of a talk about what the Creator Dive-Ins actually are. So, the Creator Dive-Ins are a focused space that we're trying to work here at Puerto Rico Game Development Association that is going to be allowing our creators to share some knowledge. And it's going to be giving a learning experience to all our viewers. But the main focus of our creator dive-ins are the creators. We want our creators to be able to have a bit of an opportunity to share their knowledge, get some feedback, get some comments from both people within PRGDA working on making your presentation, and also from people commenting and asking questions about your craft. It also makes for a very good shareable video in your portfolio. So that way you can have something to show people whenever you get asked by your family and friends, what is it you do exactly? Well, this is that opportunity to have something to just show them on YouTube. So, what makes a good topic for the creator dive ins? Well, the topic really needs to be something that has a product, something that you can easily condense down to around 20 minutes. This is excluding the Q&A, though you can give or take a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on your topic. Um, However, we want to make sure that you are not sharing any internal company information, no unreleased projects, no internal information without proven consent. Make sure to respect your NDAs. We do not want anybody getting in trouble. Even if something you're doing is super cool, make sure that you have the okay to be able to share all that information. Who can participate? Anyone in the community working on a product. So right now, it can be even one of you, dear viewers. You can get to do the next creator dive in. We have quite a few lined up, but we will show you a link later on so that you can actually sign up. Um, the benefits for participating, we've already talked about how you can share it in your portfolios, but it is a really good way for us to expand our community, to be able to support and amplify more of y'all's work. So if you're not, or if you are interested in participating, well, that's great. You can register at this link. One of our beautiful background support people will be also showing the link in the comments. The format is entirely up to the creator. It could be in English, it could be Spanish or Spanglish. It could be live, like this one today, or it could be pre-recorded. It could be a slide presentation, or it could be more of a kind of tutorial where you're trying to show something live. We will reach out to you after you've signed up to schedule a prep session for your presentation. We are going to try to help you do be the coolest you can be. So if you have any questions, you can make sure to ask it here. You could also ask it in our Discord at the Creator Dive-In channel. So yeah, if you're really interested in this, we are super excited to hear from you and have you come over. Yes, Red says Studios in Spanglish. Así es como somos aquí. But without further ado, we are going to bring in today's creator, Coraly Rosario, who's going to be talking to us all about leveling up your resume. How are you doing today, Coraly?
I'm good. I hope everyone's doing well today as well.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, you have the stage.
Sweet. Hi, everyone. So we're going to be talking about things that you can do to just get your resume to that next point or to level it up, as we often use in the game industry. A little bit about me. I am a senior UX designer at Niantic. I'm also on the board as executive vice chair for the Puerto Rico Game Developers Association. Um, you might think like, Corley, you're a UX designer. Why are you talking about resumes? And you're not a recruiter. You're not anything like that. Well, one, I have been working on products for over a decade now. I can finally say that. So I've been working on games. I've been working now on the tool side of developing products and games So I work with a bunch of different people and collaborate with a bunch of different people and look for very specific things when we are hiring for someone. So I do help with hiring. Two, I just want to make sure that the community gets the resources they need. You know, especially being Latin American, we often don't know exactly like what it is folks in the States are looking for. So this is just me being able to offer these recommendations, let's put it that way, or these best practices for you when you are starting to look for a job in the States. But yeah, let's get into it. What is a resume? During this presentation, I want to clarify, make it really, really, really like, like to the point that everything that I'm going to be talking about today is specific to the US, to the game industry in the US. If you're looking for something in, in Europe, the UK, Asia, other parts of Latin America, you might need to do a little bit more digging into specifically what they look for resumes in those countries or in those parts of the world. But everything I'm going to give you now is through my own experience, both being, having been in the past in the hiring process, as well as someone who helps hire for the game industry. All right, what is a resume? Bare bones, it's a summary of your professional accomplishments. It's what you've done, where you come from, professionally, like in your skill sets, and what you've accomplished in those places. Often I see resumes that, especially when folks are like just starting out, they'll include, you know, me and a team of 5 people worked on this project, and they focus really, really hard on the project itself, almost like a pitch for the project, rather than focusing on you as an individual. So I want to make it clear that a resume is not a pitch for a project. It's not you trying to get investment on anything else. That's a whole different thing. A resume is about you, bold, italic, like underlined and everything, and what you want to achieve next professionally. So super clear on that. Why a resume and not a CV? So when we talk about CVs, it's typically more used in academia. Some countries do prefer CV over a resume. Again, I believe in the UK that prefer CVs, but it is more comprehensive of everything you've accomplished since you started probably working. It's going to have your credentials. It's going to have any sort of certifications that maybe you've done. If you've written any done any publications, either books, articles, talks, etc. If you have security clearance, it's going to be on there too. And it's often several pages long because it's looking at your entire history. When we are going into the, job seeking in the US, people tend to prefer more of a resume. It's used specifically for job seeking. It's just a summary of things that you've accomplished. It's specific to a role that you're applying to, whereas a CV is just general, like it's way more broad. And it highlights your skills and qualifications. It's typically 1 to 2 pages versus a CV could be like 5 to 8 pages, depending on just how much you've been able to accomplish. So what do you include in your resume? Before we get to that part, we actually have to like research and dive into what the actual roles that you're looking for say. Because one, oftentimes the listing is going to say something completely different than what it is that you're expecting for the role that you're applying to. So for example, in my field as a UX designer, I often see UI UX, or I see visual designer rather than UX designer. And even under UX designer, sometimes the roles will list, responsibilities include implementation, or it includes research. It sometimes it's things that are outside of what you expect of that role. So one, looking up the role on job search sites, looking up the specific title, and understanding that like not all companies are going to label these titles the same, but it's what you're going to pull for your resume when you are crafting it for a specific role. Job search sites that I recommend. LinkedIn is really well, like often used in the US. And Glassdoor is often used as well, specifically if you want to see like reviews of like different companies. This is a great resource, but they do have a job searching function. Sites like Indeed, some of the other ones, I don't really recommend those. Like I would stick to these two, or I would stick to actually looking for the job listings on the company websites. Now there's a bunch, like way too many to list out, developers out there across the world. So a really, really great place to start is actually on the game dev map. I've talked a few times about this map in the past. You can search by city, exactly what companies are close to you or to maybe a state or a country you want to move to. And you can see developers, publishers, any sort of like more indie studios or groups, kind of like the PRGDA, but for that specific location. It's all going to be listed there. And then you can go to those actual websites. So, I mean, we all know companies like Blizzard or Riot or Santa Monica Studio. We'll just go directly to those websites and that's it. But if you're looking for something like a little more, a smaller indie, like you're not even really sure what you're looking for, this is a great site. And on those websites, you will find a career section, or typically you'll find a career section. And through there, you can apply for different roles, or at least pull those different listings. Now, for the job listing itself, I did pull up a sort of like, I want to say it's sort of like a mid-level example of a job that currently exists. They're looking for at Riot. Just in case, I don't work at Riot. I do not represent the company. Just making that super clear. This is purely an example and for educational purposes for those that are watching. So let's say you went to the Riot website and you saw this amazing concept artist, listing. You really want to read through exactly what the listing says and almost kind of like read between the lines of what it is that they're expecting of you outside of just being a weapons concept artist. The reason you want to do that is you want to make sure that your resume that you're submitting to this specific role is going to be as close as possible to what it is that they're saying without lying. Of course, lying is bad. Please do not lie. But it's more just reformatting or really looking at what it is that you've been able to give in the past to see or to emphasize those accomplishments and those skill sets in a way that matches what's in the job listing. So we're going to do like a super quick exercise. I don't know how many folks are watching, but this is the responsibilities, the qualifications and desired qualifications, which is like, oh, this would be like really, really cool if you can do this. So in the comments, what are folks seeing that really pop out to them or really see that like they're really drilling in to whoever's reading this, that this is super important to them?
I got a couple, so I'm gonna wait for chat. Oh my god, no, they already stole one of mine. Dang it.
Yeah. So consistently is one. They want someone who's consistent in what it is that they do. They want someone that no matter what they hand over, they know that they can trust that person to keep things consistent and not go completely off base and like explore something, spend time exploring something else that no tiene que ver. The fact that you're working with a team, so you're working with other people.
I think I
Craft.
see
So
quality a few times there as well.
Quality a few times. So they're really focused on making sure that you're hitting a very high quality bar and keeping that consistent as well. Working on outsource feedback. Yeah. So again, coming back to that, you're going to be collaborating, but collaborating across multiple different types of venues, I guess. So like you're probably talking to your art director, but also other team leads and also outsource teams and collecting that feedback. So having skills in collaboration is a huge plus. And you all are correct. So consistency, quality, the fact that you're going to be following style guides. So someone who has experience with and developing style guides and following them. Obviously, your more hard skills are going to be, you're an expert in 2D art. They're looking for someone who actually has experience in doing 3D block models. So it's not necessarily, we're going to have you doing 3D models. No, it's just kind of like making sure that what the layout is or where the positioning is of these characters. Concepting weapons specifically for a first-person shooter, which is really important. And they are looking for someone that, if they do name an engine, it would be great for you to call out that you have experience with that engine. So in this case, they're calling out Unreal 4. So yeah, emphasis on high quality execution, consistency, those 2D and 3D art understandings, specific assets for first-person shooter games and game engines. So you want to make sure that you do somehow, if you do have experience with what they're calling out here, you want to be able to emphasize that on your resume, include it somehow in your resume with the experience you've had or your past projects, work experience, etc. Now, there's another part that someone in chat kind of like called to it, the fact that you're working with a team. So you're working with leads, you're working with 3D animators, 3D artists and animators. You're working with providing outsourced feedback. You're going to be syncing a lot too, probably. So you're going to be in a lot of meetings talking to other people. And as a company, they look for a collaborative spirit. So everything, the fact that they just like emphasize this over and over and over and over means that collaboration experience is incredibly important to them. And lastly, as a company, they also highlight these last three things, like the fact that they look for a priority of delight of players, embodying player empathy, and caring about the player's experience. So this lets you know that they are a company that's player focused. Think about how you've adopted player focused mindsets in your craft and your projects and in anything that you've tried to accomplish over the last few years. And all of these things do divide into hard skills and soft skills, and both of them are equally important when you're writing up your resume and also just working. Your hard skills are definitely going to be more on the technical side. So I, as a UX designer, I know how to use Figma. I know how to create prototypes. I have great skill sets in visual communication. I can do UI if needed. I can do user research if needed. And another example, as a 3D modeler, you need to know Maya, Blender, etc. You need to know how to optimize models for console versus mobile or games versus film, which is completely different pipeline processes. And all of those mean hard skills. With your soft skills, it's going to be just more general characteristics, usually kind of has to do with your personality a little bit, or interpersonal skills. So how you communicate and how you interact with others. It may not be role specific compared to hard skills, which is like, I, as a UX designer, I'm not generally expected to code, depending on the job and how do you say it, and the company. Everyone treats it differently. I'm not expected to do concept art, not really. Definitely not expected to do animation work. But likewise, an animator probably isn't expected to do production work. I mean, well, okay, let's go back. An animator probably isn't expected to be an engineer either.
Yeah.
Or a producer probably isn't expected to be an engineer. So yeah. Whereas soft skills, a producer needs to be able to talk to people and relate to them and try to problem solve. Same thing with a UX designer. Same thing with hopefully an engineer, modeler, etc. It also varies according to seniority level. So if you're pretty new, soft skills aren't as much of a hard requirement because you're learning. You're still early in your career and you're trying to get better. Whereas a senior, like, you have to be able to make decisions super, super quick, get stakeholder buy-in, like be able to sell your ideas, be able to manage the team. Takes a whole nother level of soft skills. All right, for the resume itself, and I'm sure a few people watching have seen this before, but repeating it. So there's mainly two different types of resumes. You have the chronological one, which is what you typically see that folks put together. This is it's out of date, but this is like my old resume. Its emphasis, folks are emphasizing on relevant work and set up in a way that's like from the most recent place that you've worked at to the oldest. Again, relevant to the role that it is that you're applying to. And there's an emphasis on accomplishments. If you notice on at least my resume, I have like 2 to 3 bullet points for each role that I've worked at in the past. I know it's like super small right now. I'll blow up. I'll like zoom in some examples in a little bit. It shows my role, the place that I worked at, and from what date to what date was I there. You can put city if you want. You can, in my case, I sometimes put contract for contract roles versus full time. Other than that, in my case, I don't really write a summary. That's usually more communicated to the recruiter, to the hiring manager directly as you're like kind of like applying and trying to find more about the the role itself. But I do emphasize my specialties. And here are two other resumes for just general comparison. These are two friends and ex coworkers that were so gracious to send me their resumes over as examples for you all. They have about a decade, a little bit more, maybe 15 years experience in the industry. And as you can see, there's some similarities. Like we all share our phone number, um, our email. Like if there's a link to maybe a website or a portfolio or anything, we have it there and it's clickable. We emphasize our skill sets. We in Heather's case, she does have like an overview or a summary of what she's looking for next. But it's not always necessary. It just depends on the experience that you're having in when you're applying for these jobs. And here's just kind of like a zoomed in example of how we word what it is that we did in these different roles. So, you lead decision making, or you lead or create more collaborative UX processes, etc. If you can quantify something, I'm going to go into that a little bit more later. If you can quantify anything, that's even better. And sometimes it's good to call out any sort of value you gave to the company that isn't specific to your day-to-day role. So in my case, I'm really, really involved in diversity inclusion initiatives at any company I go to. And I always make sure to call that out because it's important to me as someone who would be looking, or wherever it is that I work at. I want to make sure that the company is taking initiatives and taking that focused effort into providing like better working environments for everyone. And DEI is the way that I do it. So it lets the company know, like, hey, I'm invested in this. Is there a match there? And I don't know if we have questions, Martin.
Oh, yes, we do actually. We just
Okay.
got one in by Retsa Studio. Oh my goodness, and we even have it on screen. Is it necessary to put your phone number if I have an email?
Yes. But, and I'm going to get into this later on in the presentation. So anything that you're giving directly to a recruiter, yes. So if you're emailing something, if you are, especially if you're like applying directly on their website, yeah, you got to include it. But you can make a version that doesn't have your phone number, or has your phone number but not your email. It's up to you. What you feel more comfortable, however you feel more comfortable being contacted. But when you are like actually applying or talking specifically to a recruiter at like Naughty Dog or something, ensure that you have any way they can reach you. Like there's been times where folks just don't include a lot of information. It's like, well, how am I going to reach you? You have your social media, but that's kind of weird to like reach out to you at your social media.
But going off of that a little bit, I'm a millennial, Coraly. I don't answer my phone.
No, me neither.
what do is it okay if it goes to voicemail and then I call back, or does it show a little bit that that you don't want it if you don't answer your phone and all these things?
You can write like if preferred contact method, email, or preferred contact method, LinkedIn, which some people actually prefer folks reach out to LinkedIn. If they can't reach you those two ways, then phone, you can probably put like text only or something like that if that's what you're comfortable with. A lot of times I just kind of let it go to voicemail because
Yeah.
I don't know the number, and if it doesn't show up on my caller ID, just kind of like, well, they can contact me other ways. But either way, yeah, it's just good practice to go ahead and include your phone number, even if we don't really answer it. The other type of resume is a functional resume. So this is really great for folks that have very little job experience or have maybe just worked at like one place for like a really, really long time. But you're not just going to put like, like worked at this place and then 3 bullets and that's it, because no. What this type of resume does, it looks at your qualifications for that role and pulls specifically like those words that we outlined. So that focus on consistent quality, that collaboration, maybe problem solving, if that's like something that shows up in the resume. You're going to highlight, you're going to emphasize sections for those specific things that they really, really call out, and then demonstrate how you accomplish those things. Generally speaking, in your work, if you have specific examples, that's even better. But it doesn't have to be attached to a specific job that you've had. Again, this is really great for folks that are just starting out or folks that have very, very, like haven't worked at many places, but maybe really long time at one place. You could also include a summary statement here as well. I think in this type of resume, it's even better if you include a summary statement because you are going like a little more high level in the sense of like, this is what I'm looking to achieve and these are the qualifications I have, versus I worked at this place and did this thing.
This one seems pretty interesting. So I'm assuming, why does a functional resume have a statement while usually the other resume you suggested not to have a summary statement?
They can both have a summary statement, like full on, like that's totally fine. In fact, some recruiters probably prefer both have a summary statement, especially if they're not entirely sure what your role does, which happens a lot. In my experience, in my case, especially now that I'm a decade into the work that I do, summary statement isn't as important unless I'm doing maybe like a career change.
Okay.
Because they want to understand, like, okay, you've been working in UX for this entire time. Like, why do you now want to be a producer, or why do you want to now be a creative director?
So that might actually be a really good place for some of our viewers who are not in the video game industry, who might be doing something else, and they want to explain, this is why I want to go into video game development.
Exactly.
Okay.
And your cover letter can do that too. But if your hiring manager just kind of like wants to look at the resume and that's it, then the summary statement can very succinctly say, I understand I've been a concept artist for a very long time, and I do want to shift over into programming because that totally happens. Or maybe they want to be a tech artist. So they specifically call out like why they're making that change, or if they are still within their same type of role. So still kind of a concept artist, but now focusing more on film versus games, or looking to move up into that next part of their career progression.
Yeah, that could be. There's a lot of that in the game development industry where
Mm-hmm.
you, to get a promotion, you go somewhere else, and you might
Yep.
want to explain that like, hey, I'm not looking for a mid-level position anymore. I want to be that senior. I want to
Yeah, I'm
get
looking
that
to
next
build out
level.
an organization, like a
Hmm.
department, or I'm looking to lead a project,
Hmm. Hmm.
like all of those things. So a summary statement is really good for that. Um, but yeah, between with a functional resume, because again, you are like emphasizing your qualifications,
Hmm.
then it's good to just have like that summary statement, kind of like really hitting home, like the fact that, I am qualified for these things, not only because of what I've done in the past or the skill sets that I have, but also because what I want to do next is
Hmm.
in line with these things that you are saying in the post.
One more question, and then we'll move on from this. There's a lot more
Dale.
information here. Um, let's say what would you consider this to be, very functional versus traditional resume? I don't have any professional experience in game development, but I've done a bunch of game jams. Like, I have a bunch of like projects of sort of like, hey, I have something I can show. It's just that I haven't really gotten paid to make games. Would that be more on the functional side, or would that count kind of as a traditional resume and you put those as experiences you've had?
No, it's definitely more of a functional resume. And what you can do is list out, again, highlight the specific things that they're looking for, talk about how you've been able to accomplish those things. And then at the very bottom, like for example, where it says work history, you can also include projects there.
Okay.
So I talked a little bit about accomplishments and how you kind of communicate that value that you're bringing to the company. So these bulleted points over here, how do I craft that? How do I turn that into a sentence that people will be like, whoa, that's cool. um, so I want everyone to just kind of like remember this formula: accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. I learned this from a really good friend, recruiter, that just kind of like was helping me do my own resume a while back. And he was very much like, Coraly, you're just talking about the things that you did and that's it. Like your day-to-day tasks. As a recruiter, I don't care about that. I want to know what value you brought. Use this equation. I'm like, okay, cool. So we just kind of like wordsmith and crafted around this formula. And really what you're doing is starting with an action. So what you accomplished. I did X thing. Quantify it. So I did X thing, which produced an increase in revenue or an increase in production or output, production output by so much percent. And then explain briefly how you did it by doing XYZ, by implementing a new process, by optimizing our models, by there's a bunch of different ways you can frame that. Here are some examples: like directly oversaw integration of operations throughout the company, acquisition and relocation, leading through 3-year initiative, which impacted 1,000 users. Like some of these feel like very like lots of words, but again, as long as you are stating what was accomplished, how it was measured, and what you did in order to accomplish that, that's what hiring managers and what recruiters specifically like really want to see. So implemented cloud migration process that resulted in a 40% reduction of operational costs. Like this is great. Like if you did something like this, I want to know how you did it. Like I wanted to ask you more. How did the company, like how did you get everyone to adopt it?
Hmm.
um, Create a new interface for company software that received 90% customer approval. So there was a change in the UI. They probably tested it somehow, and the customers love it. Like 90% of the customers loved it and continued to use it.
We have a sort of a question slash comment by Retsa Studio asking that they did this on their resume, and it was more clear on what they did, but they ended up then not having enough space of other skills or
Mhm.
tasks they were doing.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, I guess the question from there is this so important that it should take over all your skills or tasks, or what is like the percentage of we should follow this versus we should just write what you did?
So I'm going to go back to this slide real quick. If you notice on mine, the top left one, sorry, I kind of like mixed different things. So I talked about, leading UX decisions, establishing a collaborative process throughout pre-production and production stages. So as a senior UX designer, that's kind of expected of me to not only like lead design decisions, but also just like improve the team's process overall. That's a thing I probably have to do. But in the second one, I was a DRI, so a direct report, a directly responsible individual. There we go, and direct report on a feature that we were working on, and it let it increase from D0 to D14. So within the first 2 weeks, we saw that more people were playing the game and staying playing the game up to that second week, at the end of that second week. So the top one is more talking about like how I put my skills into practice. So that day to day. And the second one is talking more about like that accomplishment and how it was done and how it was measured. And then at the very end, I just have this thing that I'm interested in that I think is important to focus on. If you look at, so for example, the top right, in that second point, develop plus 30 weekly Tavern Brawl game modes, freely experimented with the mechanics and playstyles. As a game designer, I expect you to do that either way. I mean, 30 plus is a lot weekly, but that experimenting and with the mechanics and play styles and just kind of like trying to find that style, like that game mode that really like resonates with folks. As a game designer, I'm expecting you to do that probably in that specific role, as with live operations and live content.
I do have one question then as well, since I read the D0 to D14 and I noticed in my head, I was like, oh, maybe some of our viewers don't understand the lingo of what D0 D14 is. But the question actually is going to be, since recruiters are going to be the ones reading this and all these things, how accessible do you need to do what you do to like recruiters versus, hey, I was able to make a big O notation of n squared, like,
All the acronyms,
yeah,
all
exactly.
the acronyms. So yeah, try to make it as clear as possible, and if you have to spell something out, spell it out. In my case, because this company was so, Scopely is very PM driven and very OKR driven, or KPI driven. There we go. Key performance indicators, folks. KPI. I had expected them to already know like what these things mean. Even recruiters, just because it's so ingrained into the culture.
Gotcha.
But if it is, and you can look up people on LinkedIn. If you see that someone has only been 6 months working as a recruiter, try to spell it out as much as possible. So recommended do and don'ts for things that you should be putting in your resume, or the way that you should be setting things up in your resume. Again, these are recommended do's and don'ts. This doesn't mean Coraly said that you have to do this and that. Como que no. like it's okay, depending on, again, who you're interviewing with or who you're submitting your resume to. Some of these things might change. So definitely include your contact info, be it your email and phone number, maybe your LinkedIn. And if you are creating any sort of link on your resume, type out the whole link. And in the PDF version, make sure it's a clickable link. So like actually set it to hyperlink to wherever it is that it's going to take you. Try to keep it to one page. Reason being, I, as a hiring manager, and my recruiters, we are looking at tens of hundreds of resumes a day or per week. And unfortunately, because it's so many and we have to hire so quick sometimes, I only have a few seconds to look at your resume. It's the unfortunate truth. So trying to keep it to one page, making things as succinct as possible, but also in focusing like really, really hard on those accomplishments, on that formula, is going to be in your favor. It's a bias, unfortunately, but it's the process. So I'm just trying to help you be better at the process. The summary statement of your career goal, again, some people include it, some people don't. It just depends on what stage you're at in your career. And some people just like, I don't want to include that. It doesn't matter. Make sure you edit each resume to that specific job listing. Yes, you're going to end up with hundreds of different resumes. Naming conventions are going to be really important for your files. But yeah, try to edit, even if it's just like changing a couple words in that new version of the resume, just take the time to do it real quick. I recommend 3 bullets per role. So yeah, try to make sure that the most important thing that you did in that role, you're communicating it there. It's totally fine to use a template. And overall, make it available online, either through your website or LinkedIn. You can make a separate version of like what's available, like your contact information and stuff on that resume. You can make like a different version of it and it's fine. And spell check, folks. Please spell check, especially when it's like attention to detail as one of like the most important things that they're looking for. Spell check, send your resume over to somebody to do like a quick proof, like, make sure that things actually make sense.
Something that I'd like to add about the includable clickable web link, since you're going to also be printing these out, most of these websites actually allow you to choose your URL for your things. LinkedIn lets you change it. Obviously, it needs to be unique, but if you can, it's usually easier for the recruiter to type it out if it's your name and just one number
Exacto.
or something like that, rather than just random stuff.
Exacto. My LinkedIn, I actually went in and changed it, and it's my name, like
Yeah.
linkedin.com/in/Coraly Rosario.
Yep, the same here. It's great.
Just do it. If you have a very common name, which it happens, you can just put your name, like vamos a decir Felix Gonzalez, concept, or biz dev, or engineer, or UX, and that can set you apart from other folks that are also called Felix Gonzalez that might have already taken that name. Another really great part is that when you are Google searching, if someone Googles like Felix Gonzalez UX, chances are higher that your LinkedIn is going to show up. Entonces, the don'ts. Again, these are recommended. Don't include a picture of yourself. This is specific to, in the US, it's actually like a lot of folks ask you don't include a picture because unfortunately bias is a thing. And not everyone has your best interest at heart, unfortunately. So in order to kind of just make sure you're not working against more biases, don't include a picture of yourself. In Asian countries, they actually do ask that you include a picture of yourself. So again, there's that big difference. Some people ask if it's okay to include like a doodle of yourself. I still recommend you don't, unless you're like in a really, really, really creative role or something.
If you're
like
a concept artist, that's it.
Yeah. And in fact, the only time I ever recommend you do include a picture is if you're trying to be an actor or do modeling work or anything that requires you to be photographed or on film. Yes, you have to include a picture. That's part of like the process. But for our types of jobs, no. Don't include your address. One, this is a safety reason. Again, not everyone has your best interest at heart, unfortunately. So for safety, for online security as well, because a lot of people can do a lot of different things if they have not only access to your email and phone number, but also your address. And also, again, going back to that bias, if people see, especially unfortunately for us in Puerto Rico, not everyone knows that Puerto Rico is part of the US. So, including that you live in Puerto Rico, recruiter might not know that Puerto Rico is a territory and that you are an American citizen. They'll think, oh, this person is probably going to need a visa, when para nada. And then for folks that are in the mainland, especially if you're looking to relocate to another state or another city or something, it depends. Like if you want to include the state that you live in, that's cool. If you are looking to relocate, I just leave it out. It's fine. Like, I've used I've spoken about this in the past, but one of the unfortunate biases that we experience as Latin American folks, especially living in Puerto Rico, where we are U.S. citizens, is that folks see our names and automatically think we need a visa. So when I was in very early career, it's like Coraly Rosario, like I barely know any other Coralys. When I was early in my career, I actually had to put on my resume that I was able to work in the U.S. And as soon as I did that, I started getting more callbacks from different positions I applied to.
It's weird that in my company we have eworkers that are completely remote and can work from the States, but not Puerto Rico.
It is a tax thing.
Ah, of course. Of
That
course.
is why. So the way taxes are handled for some reason in Puerto Rico is different for companies compared to other states. Also, if that company doesn't have an office in that state, it's just more difficult for them to justify hiring someone that isn't in an office where they operate, or how do you say it? A city or a state where they operate. But yes, it is a tax thing, 100%.
We have quite a few people sharing their kindred spirits about
Yes,
this exact situation. But Red Joker did ask, can you use your own logo design for that resume?
I did it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna actually joke, do you need to have a cool logo like you had? But yes, Red
Not
Joker.
really. That's why I showed so many different types of resumes. So like in mine, yeah, I put a logo because like I come from a graphic design background and uh, visual design. I'm still a designer as is. I do want to remake this at some point. Like I don't like it anymore. Um, it's totally fine for you to create a logo. I wouldn't see like myself, like I wouldn't see that as a bad thing if I'm if I'm hiring someone for a specific job. If anything, I would just make sure that it's not like a company logo,
Mhm.
because I'm not hiring your company. I'm hiring you as an individual.
Mhm.
I know a lot of folks, especially, do a lot of freelance work and contract work, and they kind of have to make their own LLCs or some sort of incorporation, and they'll create the logo for their company that they set up, even if they're just like the only employee. Don't use that logo, because again, I'm not hiring your company to do work for me. I'm hiring you as an individual.
To circle back a little bit to the whole name and you saying I'm allowed to work in United States and all these things. I know that this is very common in other cultures to have an English name. Um,
Say,
do you
um,
suggest that, or do you think that that feels like lying?
no, because the reason they have other names has more to do with um, my understanding.
Mhm.
Again, I folks correct me if I'm wrong on this. Has more to do with the immigration process.
Mhm.
And when they go to other countries, if they're going to live in that country, they do have to provide like or choose a name. Let's put it that
Gotcha.
way. Um, what some folks do if they have like a nickname or something, like my friend Joe. Este, Joe, we know him as Joe Mag everywhere. He prefers to be called Joe Mag. But his name is Joseph Magdalena. So if you have a nickname that you prefer to be called, yes, include your like legal name, but then also include like your preference. And this is especially true for folks that are in the process of changing their name, be it because they're transitioning or they're married or getting married, etc. You do have to include your legal name just because this is like a legal process, but it's totally, totally, totally okay to include your preferred name. Este, other don'ts. Your resume shouldn't be longer than 2 pages. Please don't do that to me. Think of Coraly. Think of all the resumes I have to go through sometimes. And imagínate a recruiter that has multiple jobs that they're overseeing. Try as best as you can not to make it longer than 2 pages. Obviously, nothing confidential. Respect your NDAs. If you do have something that you would prefer to discuss confidentially behind closed doors with them, just like that's during the interview process, that you can probably do that. But on the resume itself, like the game that I was just working on until a year ago, I couldn't even type in the code word, like the code name for it anywhere. I just had to write working on an unannounced game.
Unannounced title.
And I couldn't say anything else. Now that it's out, like I can say, yeah, I worked on Marvel World of Heroes for 2.5 years, and I did these things while I was on there. But yeah, if it hasn't been announced, no existe gente. Don't talk about it. Skills like Word, PowerPoint, things that you just kind of like are expected to know how to use. You don't really have to say that you know how to use them unless it's directly related to your day-to-day work. So if you're a producer or if you're a game designer, a lot of game designers work in spreadsheets all day, every day. It's just boxes and boxes all day long. So yeah, I need to know that you're able to use the sheets or the equivalent Excel. But otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Don't include hobbies unless it's relevant to the role. So a lot of folks, especially in the creative industry, we do a lot of photography on the side. We just love taking pictures, or I know you guys can't see it. I do pins. Yeah.
If you move your hand quickly, it disturbs the blur, so you can get pictures.
So I do a lot of pin stuff, or I do miniature model building for like these little tiny houses and stuff. And it's just kind of like a side thing I do for me. Sometimes I draw. I mean, cool, but it's not something that should go on your resume. And if you do want to create a website for it, make sure it's a separate website. And then the last one, don't lie. Please do not lie on your resume. We will find out in the process. Are there any questions, Francisco?
None so far. Some people have been talking about their nicknames and some conversations about that.
I forgot about this. Make sure you have a professional email. Please, y'all. Yo, and it's happened. I don't want to see, 420xoxo69@gmail.com or anything like that. That's kind of weird. Create a professional email for yourself. And, mine is Coraly Rosario. I have folks who, it's their name, again, UX, or their name, VizDev, or concept, whatever. Some variation of your name or something that I can easily search. And same thing with your nickname. Please, don't make people call you really weird things. because that's uncomfortable for everyone.
I can't go by El
Este,
Diablo or something. Oh
sí,
no.
no. All right, and we're almost done. So ATS, I want to talk about this super quick because this will affect how you kind of like export your resumes. An ATS is an applicant tracking system. It's what recruiters use to keep stock of who's applying for the positions and how well they fit into that position and who's moving forward and at what stage. We use a platform called Greenhouse, I think, and we set everything up through there. But the thing with these applicant tracking systems is that it does parse through your resume. It identifies keywords related to the job listing, and then kind of some of them, not all of them do this, but some of them will rate the resumes, and whoever like has a high score gets pushed to the recruiter or to the hiring manager. So it gets moved up. If the if the if the software can't really parse through your resume correctly because you have like a lot of like a weird layout where like it'll read through this but then jump over to this thing but then jump over to here, and it's going to get super confused and you'll end up getting a low score because it can't read through it properly. And if you aren't using similar keywords to the job listing, same thing, it's just going to give you a low score because there isn't that compatibility, entre comillas. That's why it's so important, that exercise that we did at the beginning of identifying those words and including that in your resume. You want to do that. If you do want to compare your resume to a job listing, there are websites out there that let you do that. SkillSyncer is one. However, just make sure that you substitute your personal information because they do store everything. And then lastly, there's 3 types of resumes you should have or export as. One is going to be for your recruiter or hiring manager. So this is what you give directly via email, LinkedIn, through like some sort of messaging, or physically. That's going to have your phone number, all the information, like exactly as how you intend for them to view your information. The second one is a resume for your LinkedIn. So I recommend you remove your phone number and email for your own internet privacy if you do this version. And it could be similar to the one that you like layout wise to the one that you give to a recruiter. But it'll just take out whatever information you're not comfortable sharing. And then the last one is a resume that's specifically for these applicant tracking systems. If you want to use a template, do it. So like Heather's resume, the one on the right, is perfect for an applicant tracking system. Like I have no hesitation that it's going to read through this and completely understand and pull exactly what it needs to pull. Versus Joe's maybe might jump around a little bit, but I think for the most part he's good. Mine probably not. And it's this is the one I typically give to people directly. And really it's because it's going to jump from experience over to my, and this is what it usually does. It jumps from the title experience over to my phone number and personal information, over to block by block, all these different experiences, then over to specialties, then down to like other highlights in education. So this one for the ATS is a nightmare. And I do have another version that's created in Word that's way simpler than this.
Looks good though. Looks real good.
Yeah, and it's just that's the one I prefer people to have on hand. And then just I guess for everyone's insights, Talent Hub is what recruiters typically use on LinkedIn. Bamboo HR is one that's really, really popular right now. And then Greenhouse is another popular one. If folks want to look a little bit more into how these systems work, this is what I recommend you start looking into or start off with. Quick recap. Number 1, search and apply on the company site first, always. If the listing doesn't exist there, then go ahead and look on a job search site like LinkedIn or Glassdoor. Identify the keywords on the job listing and cater your resume to that specific role. So you're going to be changing words out, or even accomplishments, or even sometimes the whole like job experiences, because they don't relate to what it is that you're applying for. Choose the resume style that's best for you, be it functional, chronological. Some folks do a hybrid, which works for them. Frame your accomplishments with that measurable, with those measurable identifiers. So that equation that I showed you all. And create a version of your resume that is ATS friendly. And that is it. And we went over a bit, and I'm so sorry.
No,
Pero,
it's all good. We had a lot of good questions coming in, and we wanted to
yeah,
get those
I want to make
answered.
sure, yeah.
Well, actually, we do have a question here. Why use hidden cell phone number and email in LinkedIn and website?
So
I read
think
joke.
about it this way. When you sign into your email, what is the information that it asks you for when you're doing authentication? If there's sometimes it needs to send something to your phone number in order to say, yes, this is me, I'm logging into my email. If the other apps and other sites do some sort of combination of your email and phone number for you to be able to access your account, your bank needs to know where you live. So just think of this as just general internet safety and security for yourself, so that you don't get into a position where your accounts get hacked. That because your information is publicly available to whoever wants to download it. But that's typically why sometimes we'll take the cell phone number out or an email. Also, general safety for folks who may not be in a situation where they want that information out publicly, like maybe someone's trying to find them and do them harm. So yeah, like it's just safety reasons. Do you recommend doing different resumes specific to the companies you want to apply for? What do you leave? So LinkedIn profile, I would just keep it as is. So I almost treat my LinkedIn profile as like a CV. It has all of my accomplishments. It has my certifications, both my degrees as well as like any sort of programs or extra certifications I've taken. I think I include some articles that I've written or talks that I've done. It has both my websites, I think. So it's more just like a comprehensive, this is everything about me and everything that I've done over the past decade. Versus the resume is just going to be like specific to that role that you're applying to within that company. And that's why you want to kind of like cater that resume to that specific role. It doesn't mean you have to change the layout. You don't. It's just what's contained within it is going to change, or just edit a little bit better.
And usually when you're going through all these resumes and stuff, you usually have like your final version that you're going to submit is 3 bullet points, but you might have like 8 different bullets in a job description, and then you look, okay, they want these 3 would be the best for this job, and let me just hide the other 5. So little by little you get shortcuts to all these. Do you think adding more skills in your resume helps or makes them more cloudy from the job role you want?
Cloudy. So going back to, I guess, the hobby thing. So my background is in graphic design, which means I know how to do logo design, packaging, branding, photography. I also like taught in the past. I know how to do image correction. I draw and illustration. These are all amazing skill sets to have. What does that have to do with UX design? And would including these as skill sets in my UX design resume be valuable to whoever's reading it, or just be more like, well, what does she want to do? Like, does she want to be a UX designer? Because I'm seeing like photography here, y eso no tiene que ver. So So it's not that less skills is more. It's is more important. Just what are the skills that you have that are specific to what it is that they're looking for. If the role is a designer for a marketing team, then yeah, like all those skills, like definitely I would write them down, because on the marketing team you need to be super like flexible and wear many hats sometimes. If you have video editing experience, they would love to know that. I don't. Um, but again, it's not that you want less on the resume. It's just you want to make sure that you are communicating the most important things, including skill sets and programs that you know how to use.
If you ever wanted to, you or any of our other viewers would ever want to give one of these awesome creator dive-ins, just as Coraly has done, we do have a link there to sign up. But until those next ones, Coraly, thank you so much for leveling up our resumes today.
Dale, dale. I hope everyone found it informative, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their week.
Definitely. Thank you so much again. Yes, I've said thank you like 3 times. Thank you all for coming. This has been Creator Dive In by Puerto Rico Game Development Association, and we'll see you next time.